Next up, we have Sophia Lara, and she is with a company called Kalypso, who consults within this industry. One of the exciting things about Kalypso is that, obviously with Gap, they have their set of brands and they have their workflow and their standards. Whereas a company like Kalypso can really look across the broader spectrum and see what a lot of different brands are doing, and gather up that information and present it back and provide insights that not really any other, not really any other company that's doing this type of work is able to do. So I'm really looking forward. I know Sophia from some previous work. Really excited to see her. There you are. Good to see you, Sophia.
Great to see you.
And hear about what you have to say.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. So I am here to share out the findings of our latest survey. So
Fantastic.
yeah, so nice to meet everyone. As Joshua said, I'm Sophia Lara with Kalypso. We're a consulting firm that supports many industries, and I support the consumer retail footwear and apparel practice. And we host a survey each year in the industry that talks about DPC and the adoption. We started this survey back in 2016 because, like you've heard on the different presentations, everyone was at different areas in their digital product creation journey. And we really wanted to get an understanding of where people were taking it, where they were investing, how far they were going, what capabilities they were building. And we wanted to really kind of see how that was going, especially from our view of being able to support everyone. And so now that we're at 2023, this year, we took a slightly different approach. We feel like within the industry, there's so many people that are already in the journey, they're going there. And so what we really wanted to see is, are you achieving that value that you sought out? And have you realized that? And where are you kind of pushing it? And with the ever emerging technology, have you been able to grow and adapt to how quickly this industry is evolving? So we have polled and we got researchers from over 100 people across the industry. And you can see this breakdown that kind of shows the different functions, business types, and market segments in the area that we were able to get a great insight for. And so today we're going to be deep diving into just a highlight of the details of really kind of where people are going and like what issues they might be running into and how we can roll up our sleeves and get after it together. So I don't think that these will come as a surprise to anyone, but when we polled everyone, we wanted to see, are the values aligned? Is what you're trying to achieve with your digital product creation transformations the same across the board? And so what I gathered here was the top 6 that we've seen. So the number one by far for probably anyone that you could talk to is speed to market. We want to be closer to trend. We want to reduce timeline. You saw from Bernard and Roz about how digital fitting can save time. We know that it can save time in so many other areas. So this is a kind of key initiative that everyone's trying to achieve. And then, of course, we have improved product design. You want to create that more time and space for your designers so that they can iterate digitally and get their ideas going before they send it to the factory, before they get their physical. And of course, fostering innovation. I think, as we all know, with the AI boom and the emerging technology in the area, technology is just part of us and we have to become friends with it in order to drive ourselves forward. What was interesting is that technology and increased sustainability were actually tied for third. And I feel like with this current market of the laws are changing in terms of how we can protect ourselves and protect our businesses, in terms of like making sure that we're sustainable, making sure we have traceability, that this increased sustainability has really jumped up to be a top priority. And then the other two about attracting talent and improve customer experience have been kind of on the docket for a couple of years, and we can see that they're still moving strong. So what's causing the issue, And I think what was really fascinating to me as we saw these top areas is the drastic difference, mostly in the top 3, of where people are struggling. And I think that first one really says a lot, change management. So we'll get into the details in the next following slides, but just to see the difference between the 2022 at 29% and then the 2023 at almost 70%, jumping to number one, I think anyone who has experienced this pandemic and is keep going on and is constant change fatigue can understand why that's become an issue. And I know that you've seen probably in the other presentations during Tech Fest about talent. How are we up training our teams? How are we getting people on board? How are we finding that? And then just as we talked about ROI. So there's a lot of things that we uncovered in our survey. And right now we're going to deep dive into a couple of them just about how we can kind of talk to see where the industry is going. So we know change management is an issue. Bernard mentioned it. I'm sure you've heard it from a bunch of other people, and you might see it day to day in your own work, but it's right now the biggest barrier. But what we also found in the survey was that only 20% of people have really indicated that they have any support or dedicated resources. And so there's such a significant gap in how the businesses are really approaching these transformation initiatives. And I think the big thing here to talk about is there's change fatigue in everything. I think anyone who's lived and survived in the retail industry, and I actually came from industry. I started as a textile designer, and then I worked at Coach for almost a decade doing their DPC initiative starting for 2011. Every year was constant change. There was leadership changing. There was different reorganizations. You respond to the market. If the stock prices go down, the direction changes. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges with digital product creation is it's a multi-year initiative. You need a long-term roadmap in order to achieve that benefit. And you need someone along the way to support the journey to help you, because it's not just one function's job that you're changing. It's across the entire end-to-end product creation process. So you need everyone to get involved, to be participating. You need those steer codes. You need those key partners in the SMEs to not only drive and build your capabilities, but also support and help people understand why they're changing. What is in it for me? How is this going to make my life better? What impact does it have on the business, and why is it valuable? So I think that this is a great opportunity, and I know a lot of people are looking at different ways to address it. I've seen we've heard a buzz at different companies that they're bringing this back as starting to be a priority because they've seen how affected and fatigued people are in this area. And I think, I hope that in the next year, we'll see that this number maybe comes down a little bit as people really put their resources into supporting this area. And much talked about as well as the ROI. So like we just said, digital product creation is a multi-year investment. It's hard to calculate just a strong, specific ROI. It's not like, oh, if I do a digital sample, I'm going to save 40% and everything's going to be great. And here are my, connect the dots. It's a lot more fluid than that. And so what we're finding is there's more of an intense scrutiny to not only refresh and refine the business case, but also to get funding. Because as I'm sure that many people have noticed, that as you go in the digital product creation journey, it's not just that you have to pick a 3D tool. It's not just that you get a DAM or a PLM. There's a multitude of technologies that come together to make up an ecosystem to support this big transformation shift. And I think that's one of the struggles, because oftentimes we find, even so with the ROI, that a lot of the funding comes from the tech side of the team. So if the IT department can't define or calculate that specific ROI, there's a harder structure. So what we find is that there needs to be a lot of partnership between the business and their IT teams to make sure that everyone understands what the requirements are, what the value that we're bringing, and how to really put that forward to help anyone on the journey understand the bigger picture and to help calculate that ROI so that you can keep moving forward. Because what we find a lot, again, is when we said that number one benefit that people wanted to achieve was the closer to market, we find people really struggling with that. And I think people are struggling with that because they are not utilizing this connected digital thread through the capabilities, because they're getting stuck, and then they're not having the support to be able to continue that journey, whether it comes internally from change management or from investment or from other areas, which is kind of interesting when we get to our next point where we talk about underutilized foundational tech. So you hear technology talked about all the time. I find that PLM tends to sometimes be the least sexy of the technologies that we talk about, but so very essential to how we work and partner downstream and how we, build our product, communicate with our vendor partners, communicate internally, track information. And so while 87% of people understand that it's critical, most people we found were still sharing all of their assets or doing their communication through SharePoint. And most people actually said, around 40%, that they don't actually have a strategic vision on how to integrate or connect their technologies. So we find that this disconnect between having the technology and understanding how to actually make it work and achieve the vision is a huge kind of barrier into how people are able to really achieve those dreams, because the goal of digital product technology is that you have this data rich asset that starts at the very beginning and flows downstream through all of these different end uses. And in order to do that, you need things to connect and talk to each other. So I thought that this was really interesting when we kind of uncovered this, because I'm sure that you all probably know people that will still send Excel charts or emails or links, and how hard that can be to keep track of and keep up with the changes in a lot of these areas. So it's just been very interesting to kind of uncover these different areas that people have focused on. And I think that these three things together kind of highlight the big changes as to why people aren't achieving the value that they set out to achieve. And so we are trying to, as Kalypso, we try to work with our clients to say, like, okay, how can we kind of get things together? How can we connect? Who can we support? And I think what's really interesting is, now that we see this highlight of where the disconnect is, it's a great area even for your own place to come back and look and say, oh, okay, like, what is keeping us from moving forward? What is the lack of support we have? Like, we have the tools, do we need training? Do we need time? Do we need support? It's definitely a multi-pronged process in order to kind of really achieve that visual and that goal. And we did uncover a lot more insights in our presentation. So I encourage everyone to download the report and take a look for yourself, because we talk a lot about emerging technology and the skill set and just kind of the future of where we think everything's going. But with that, I'd love to take any questions from anyone that they may have.
Thank you, Sophia. A great session. It's funny. I actually just mentioned in the comments section here that there's a little known fact about SharePoint, is that it actually has a file limit, and if you use it as your primary tool, you will get to a limit. You can get to a limit where you can't scale any further, at least on a single platform. So it's, from my perspective, I think it's really critical, as you say, to move to something like digital asset management, or working with a PLM system, as long as that PLM system is robust, to move away from that kind of stuff. So really, really great point. Question for you. You had a lot of that feedback was about DPC, digital product creation. How do you define, and maybe how does Kalypso define digital product creation? Is it digital prototyping and digital sampling, or is it a bigger spectrum?
It's a bigger spectrum. The way that we kind of view digital product creation is really a bunch of connected capabilities that create the digital thread. So we find it's the virtualization of the product that you have. It's the automation of the processes that you want to streamline and make more efficient. And then it's the analytics of the data, because you now have that rich data information. So it's the connected thread through all of those that together make up digital product creation. But it's interesting that you brought that up, because I do find that because it's called digital product creation, there is this misnomer sometimes that it just stays in the product design teams, or that there's no downstream. And so I think that can also be difficult for companies to navigate, especially as they figure out how to grow. It's like, okay, now we've implemented this in our product design teams. How do we get it to marketing? How do we get it to consumer? Who leads this? Is it the right person? Is it one person, or operations? How do we connect those dots? And so it's definitely, I think, one of the other kind of barriers in this growth that we're trying to figure out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just so everyone knows, the Alvanon team just put a link to Kalypso's research in the comments. So if you want to take a look at that, please do go ahead and click on that and go through. So I have another question for you.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned organizational change management.
Mhm.
Again, personal experience. That's really key to
Mhm.
end user adoption, and end user adoption, from my perspective, is key to success. What what is you see what have you seen at Calypso that has been, let me put it another way. A lot of times, I don't think leadership
Mm.
sees the value,
Yeah.
and wants to spend the budget on something as, I don't know, maybe as nebulous as organizational change management. What have you seen as the keys to success in getting that the over the
Yeah.
board?
You hit that spot on. I always find that change management is the first thing that generally gets either cut or dismissed by the wayside when it comes to budget cuts. They're like, oh, we don't need this. And I think it's often due to a lack of understanding of what's actually included. So, change management is a multitude of different practices that come together to help support the change. So, you have communication that's up internally to your leadership, you have communication that's down to the functional teams, and then you have communication that's out, whether it's your vendor partners or what have you. And then there's that external communication of like, how do we present ourselves to the world or to Wall Street, which I think, especially in this industry, is actually more important than people realize because of how volatile and reactive that things can be. But I find what helps to make it successful is really building in an internal kind of network of change, so that you're not only supporting that resource with maybe a dedicated resource, but you have people on the ground that are also part of that change that can help really push out those new practices or those communications. So if you get something out, it's like your own little mini team of influencers. You can be like, hey guys, like, did you see this new standard coming up? Did you see that we're doing outfitting now in 3D? Did you see we're doing visual sorting? Like, come check it out. And I think that that really helps, but also creating a loop of feedback, because I think the biggest miss from teams is like they get feedback and then they don't react on it, or they say that they do and it's not really responded to. And I think creating kind of an open space for being able to understand what's going on at all levels and then
Mhm.
respond to it in the appropriate way is a great opportunity for companies.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that you mentioned, or both in this conversation and the one that I brought up around the dam conversation, is the silos that can be within companies. A
Yeah.
lot of times, even those silos have their own budgets, and so it's difficult sometimes to string an effort across, from design through to product development, then on, especially into like marketing or brand marketing.
Yeah.
Um, that probably needs a CEO involvement at that point. I mean, what would you recommend someone who's like, let's say, a middle manager, or even, a director, getting that message up to leadership?
That's a great question. I feel like you almost need to do an internal PR campaign, but really focus on the value. So when you're talking to that C-suite level, like, they want to understand why they're investing in this practice. What is it going to bring to the table? How is it going to make their business better? How is it going to make their teams better? And I think the great way is to align with your own internal company's priorities for the year. They come out every year, usually at a town hall. Your leadership will tell you, here's what we're going for this year. That's what they're sharing out to the street. That's what they're sharing internally. So the best way, I think, to get that value across is to take those priorities from your business and to mirror your DPC strategy to them and say, like, here's how our strategy is aligned with your strategy, and here how we can make it happen. But this is what we need from you in order to get that way. And I think helping them understand how those things come together really helps push that envelope forward. And also, when you have that level, you have to be high level. They don't want to hear about like what your mesh looks like and why your material isn't working. They want to understand kind of the sexiness of like, okay, I'm bringing this in and this is going to help my build morale. This is going to help make us closer to market. We can hit our sustainability goals and we can really move forward. So I
Yeah.
think that that's kind of really how you can kind of connect those dots internally, especially in those bigger corporations where it's kind of harder and it's easier to get lost with different initiatives.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a storytelling that needs to be at the right level. You can't
Yeah.
talk tech, speaking the right language to your audience. Yeah, it can be very difficult, but I think it's definitely worth the time and effort. Well, Sophia, anything else you'd like to say, or we covered it all?
No, I think we've covered it, but thank you so much for having us. And please please go download the research. We'd love to hear from you, and please reach out if you want to have any one-on-one meetings to talk more about it.
Yeah, I definitely will check it out myself. And it looks like Gabby, who presented earlier, says is completely agreeing with the silos having their own budgets and KPIs. Yeah. So yeah, there you go.
Awesome.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Sophia. It's great to see you. We have to catch up, you and I.
Definitely.
I'd love to have a chat with you. So take care.